Hello and welcome to Sydney Opera House. Here we are on the Playhouse stage with Bell Shakespeare's production of the Scottish play. Oh, I can say Macbeth. We're doing Macbeth. I can say Macbeth. That's fine. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which we broadcast today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay respect to elders past and present. My name's James Evans. I'm the director of this show, and with me are the fantastic cast of Macbeth. And I'd just like to go around right now and introduce you all, or can you introduce yourselves and tell us which character you're playing?
Hello, my name is Eloise and I play Lady Macbeth.
My name's Jack and I play Macbeth.
Hello, my name is Jane and I play Witch number 3. I play Fleance. I play Minnie Macduff, who is known as Penny in this production, and the pivotal role of Seyton.
My name's Chantelle. I play Witch 1, Lennox, and Penny's mother, Lady Macduff.
Hello, my name's Stacey. I play Witch 2, Ross, and one of the murderers.
Hi, my name's Rowan, and I play the bleeding captain, Banquo, a doctor, a murderer, and also part of the apparitions.
Hi, I'm David. I play Malcolm. I also play one of the murderers and also part of the apparitions.
Hi, my name's Felix, and I play Duncan and Macduff and a murderer and the third part of the apparitions.
So, fantastic. Thanks so much, guys. So, as you can see, the actors play multiple roles in this show. You may have a question about that. I don't know. That's up to you. So, we can kick off the Q&A part of this session now. If you want to join the conversation, go to our Facebook page or on Twitter. Use the hashtag BellQA and send through your questions. Now, Tiana and Caitlin are standing by with your questions over there. Do we have a first question? Who's that? Caitlin?
It's me, yes.
Yep.
So our first question comes from Darren in Homebush, and he would like to know, why did you choose the modern day minimal concept?
Why did we choose the modern day minimal concept? Great question, Darren. Well, what we were really keen to do with this production was let the words and the play speak for themselves. We really wanted it to be about the relationships, about the acting, about Shakespeare's words, and so we stripped the set right back and we exposed all of the bare bones of the theatre. You can see we've used all the theatre walls here. All of the costumes that the actors use are already on the hangers on stage, ready to go. The actors don't really leave the stage, they get changed on stage. So we wanted to expose the bones of theatre making and not try and hide the fact that we are telling a story. We're putting on a play, and that it's not a naturalistic experience, it's storytelling. And the actors can chop and change costumes, and the set just helps to support that, rather than to impose a concept on top of the production. Another question from you, Caitlin? Tiana?
Yes, our next question comes from Mary Lou, who is travelling 800 kilometres to Melbourne next week to see the show with students from Hayward Memorial High School. She would like to know, what surprises might we look for in your production of Macbeth?
What surprises might we look for? Who wants to answer that question? David Sonchen, how about you? Do you want to answer that question?
Well, look, I mean, we've got a cast of 8, so there's a lot of sort of condensing of characters and things like that. So you'll expect to see some characters left out, some being included into other roles. Malcolm, for instance, am I allowed to reveal what he's doing? Sure. Yeah, so Malcolm uses a bit of the Porter's text, which sometimes the Porter's left out just because it doesn't quite fit into the overall kind of feel of the show. But we decided to experiment with the idea of giving Malcolm the Porter's text and sort of change up his character a little bit. Other things, also the fact that this show is quite stylized as well. So it's sort of take away the sort of the realism of it, and again, it's sort of stripped back, isn't it? It's kind of like the murdering and the fight scene actually is quite a surprise as well.
Play with time, don't we?
Yeah, there's a big sort of this whole idea of like jumping, sort of skipping time, even within the scenes that are sort of written to just sort of go as is, but we've kind of freeze frames and sort of jumping in and out of different bits of action. Yeah.
Yeah, so it moves really quickly. I mean, it's only 90 minutes long, so it really kind of rockets along, and scenes have been condensed and pushed forward to really drive the dramatic action. Tiana, Caitlin?
Yeah, so we've had quite a few questions about the fight sequence in the play. Sarah from Blacktown and then Adele and Joy in Melbourne would all like to know how heavy are the swords and what they're made of, and also how will you decapitate Macbeth in the production?
Wow, how heavy are the swords? Well, I'll pass that over to Felix and Jack. If you want to address that, then maybe we can even demonstrate a little bit of that fight for us, okay?
Sure. Yeah, well, the swords are probably 2 to 3 kilos. They're quite heavy. They're made of metal. Jack and I had to work out extensively before this show to be able to lift them, let alone swing them. So, but it's yeah. In doing the fight, you know, it was something that we worked on with our fight and movement coordinator, Scott Witt, who was working with us from day one in rehearsals to help us kind of choreograph and build the fight. And we were lucky enough to be able to use the swords, which, as you can see, they are metal and they're quite heavy. In terms of decapitation, that's always a tricky one, particularly because in our production we don't ever leave the stage. So we had to come up with a way of trying to cut Macbeth's head off without being able to go and get a fake head or anything like that. And you know, the only kind of pieces of equipment that we have on the stage are the clothing racks. So we've come up with a, I think, fairly ingenious solution using clothing, which you'll have to wait and see.
Okay, terrific. Now, guys, do you want to show us a little bit of that fight? Because maybe we can then we'll talk about how we do stage combat without hurting each other. Yeah. So why don't we show a little bit of the fight? We'd better stand up and get out of the way. And quick warning: don't try this at home. Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, well, okay, great. Now, can you just slow it down for us this time and turn it around so that we can see how you make those noises? Because obviously, I mean, it looked like he punched you in the face a couple of times there, but obviously he didn't. So show us how you make the sounds and how you do those punches without hurting each other. Sure. Thanks.
So at this point, Felix hits himself there. And I hit myself.
Okay, so the way you make the sound, just do the hit one more time for us. So the way you make the sound is that as you come through your punch, Felix whacks himself on the chest over there, and then the other one, Jack hits himself on the chest to make the noise. All right, fantastic, guys. Thank you very much. All right, come and grab a seat. Come and grab a seat. Obviously, stage combat can be very dangerous. You're playing with real metal flying through the air, so the actors really take a long time to rehearse. They rehearse slowly for many weeks, and they make sure that they warm up the fights before every single day of performances, just to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And even still, does anything ever go wrong, Jack? Do you want to answer that question?
Things do go wrong. There's certainly an element of being in live theatre. There's a lot of adrenaline. You can get very excited, and occasionally, like we had a fight the other day where nothing terribly bad happened, but just in the heat of the moment, one of our moves was kind of lost, and then the rest of the fight felt really frantic, and we got quite close to actually hitting each other with the swords. So you have to remain very aware of where the other person's body is in the space and your own body. And then you have other moments where, you know, so, why are you looking at me? Where, you know, just accidental things happen, even though you've been training so much, where you might get a whack in the head or you might, you know, slip over and fall. And so it's really hard, but we just have to kind of remain as vigorous as possible and just keep rehearsing them every time we've got a show. Even if you feel like, oh, well, we've done this fight 150 times already. No, rehearse it again, just to make sure, to be safe. So.
Thanks, Jack. Great. Okay, Tiana, you got a question?
We have a few questions about the language. So Olivia, Renee and Caroline in Victoria, as well as Gerline on Twitter, would like to know, is it difficult to interpret and remember Shakespeare's language? And why are soliloquies important in the play?
Interesting. Is it difficult, Stacey, is it difficult to interpret and remember Shakespeare's language?
I think it can be difficult when you first start. It can be very intimidating, I think, when you pick up a Shakespeare, a play or a sonnet even, and have a bit of a read. And I know I personally always have to have a bit of a look up of the words I don't know. So I don't know everything as soon as I read it. So there's definitely a bit of research that goes in and a bit of work that has to go into understanding everything you say. Because that can be difficult. And I think it's one of the most important things you have to do when you're playing Shakespeare is understand everything you say. So, yeah, I definitely look up all the words. And from there, I actually find Shakespeare a little bit easier to remember. For me, it's a bit like a song because it's usually written in such a strong rhythm, like the iambic pentameter is so strong that it really helps me to remember the words because generally it can only be the word that it is because that's the one that fits within the rhythm of the line. So yeah, for me, I find it can be quite easy to remember, but definitely difficult to start off with, and then the more you do it, like anything, the more you practice, the more you do it, the easier it gets. I think.
That's great. Thanks, Stacey. Now, Eloise, you have a couple of soliloquies in this play. What is the point of a Shakespearean soliloquy, and what is the significance of it?
I believe, the significance of the soliloquy is definitely so that the audience gets an insight and a really, I think it's a private moment for the character that the other characters on stage are generally not involved with. So, for example, with a lot of, Lady Macbeth's soliloquies, these are private moments that she doesn't share with anyone else, particularly not Macbeth, but the audience does need to know that that is where she is, I think, emotionally and mentally, in order for the story to make sense.
So really you're breaking the fourth wall in a way. It's definitely not a naturalistic style of performance and directly addressing the audience, yeah?
Yeah. Directly addressing the audience, almost asking the audience for answers, where that character can't find the answers in themselves or the other characters. So I think it really is a moment where the character is reaching out because they've got no one else really to talk to or to find the answers in.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's important to remember that in Shakespeare's time, these plays were done in the afternoon. So it wasn't like we sit in a theatre today and the audience is in darkness and there's light on the stage. In Shakespeare's theatre, there was light everywhere. So the audience and actors could see each other equally well. So when an actor turned to speak to the audience, it was really like having a conversation. And often in that theatre, say, for example, in the Globe Theatre, the audience would answer back and talk back to the actor. And so the actor had all of that to contend with as well, as well as getting on with the play. You get that as well, don't you?
There's a bit of that.
Okay, Caitlin, you've got a question over there?
Yeah, so just as a follow-up to Eloise, Angela from Facebook would like to know why you think in Act 3, Scene 2, Macbeth doesn't tell Lady Macbeth that he's already arranged to have Banquo and Fleance murdered.
Ooh, good question. Why doesn't Macbeth tell Lady Macbeth? I think at that point or part of the play, the relationship between Lady Macbeth and Macbeth has really disintegrated at this point. I don't think, in fact, this might be for Jack to answer, but I think at that point Macbeth doesn't trust anyone anymore, including his wife. And I think that possibly Macbeth can see the state in which Lady Macbeth is going, and that piece of information is actually not going to help the situation or their relationship. And so that is a piece of information that he must, I don't know, maybe you might want to answer this, Jack.
Jack, what do you think about that?
No, I completely agree. I think it's important to remember, well, for me anyway, that I think they still love each other very much. I just think that the relationship is crumbling under the strain of, you know, these horrible things that they've done. So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of, I feel he's aching to tell her, but he can't. It's almost like if he says that to her, then he's admitted the horror of what he's about to do to himself as well. So I think it's easier to kind of keep that between him and these faceless murderers and off his best mate, rather than speak to his wife and confide in her and actually say, listen, this is what I'm planning on doing. And he breaks down as well and, you know, says, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. Like, I think he wants to open up to her, but he's just realised the horror of what he's done, and so he can't let that escape, this cage that he's got. So.
Great, thanks, guys. Okay, Caitlin, you've got a question for us?
All right, so we've got a couple of questions about the different characters that people play. Amy from Melbourne would like to know, have you ever played a part of an opposite gender? And then we've got Alexandra, also in Victoria, who would like to know how you develop your own interpretation of the character that you play. And then Meg on Facebook would like to, Danielle on Facebook would like to know what the hardest parts are in developing that character.
Okay, great. Well, characters of an opposite gender, we do a bit of that in this production. Chantelle, you play Lennox, one of the lords, who's traditionally played by a man. Mm-hmm. What does it do to those characters to have them played by women?
I get the feeling, just looking, when I first started looking at Lennox, I found that especially, I have no idea because we play it, I have no idea what act or scene it is, but when Duncan has been killed and Macbeth and Lennox go off to see Duncan, coming back in, I find that in the original script, it's likely that Lennox would have been at war as well. Lennox theoretically would have been fighting as well. And what I find in this production is that it's less likely that Lennox as a woman would have been fighting, especially given the costumes that we have and the costumes that we're working with and sort of the world that we've set up. So coming back into that scene, what Lennox is dealing with is having just seen, possibly for the first time, 2 men killed in front of her, a dead king, and, you know, what she would normally see, what she wouldn't normally see, which is, you know, warfare in a very domestic place. And so in terms of swapping characters, it actually changes quite a bit, even just for that scene. I mean, coming back in, I've started having a moment with David as Malcolm, just where we sort of acknowledge the fact that his dad has just died and his dad has just been killed. And those are all things that I don't know necessarily that a male playing the role would work with or from that standpoint.
So you found different nuances to the character by playing it as a woman. And then in terms of interpretation of character, Rowan, perhaps you can answer this question. Where does your interpretation of your different characters that you play come from? Banquo, the Doctor.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the main things with this cast is that we're all quite a similar age, aren't we? We're all pretty much in our 20s, you know, let's say that. So in some sense, I think, you know, like before we started, we were all kind of learning our lines, we're researching, reading books on Macbeth, doing a lot of research, going through all the text, you know, working out exactly what Stacey said, working out what each image is, what all the words mean, and kind of knowing what you're saying. Then when we get on the floor, you deal with a whole different set of circumstances, because instead of it being, say, Duncan that you're talking to, who's, you know, this 60-year-old guy, you're talking to Felix. And so we've actually got to, you know, really work off the people that we are cast as, you know. And for me, that's kind of, in a way, I'd say the main way that choices are discovered. And it doesn't come out of, you know, your mind thinking about Banquo. Like often if I play Banquo, they say Banquo is a good person. That doesn't help me at all because A, that makes it really uninteresting. and it makes me lead into choices that are like a little twee, like all right, Maccas, So you've got to find a way, you've got to find a thing. What's at the root of the character, what they want, and you've got to ask yourself questions like, does Banquo want to be king? And I actually think that Banquo would make, for example, a great king. So I think that for that reason, he would have to have the idea in his head that if it were to come down to it, he should be king. It could be for him. So you've got to kind of have all that backstory stuff, even if you're playing a character that those circumstances kind of never come up for you, which is definitely a lot of the interesting stuff. And then we kind of play off each other and do different things each night, I guess.
Great. Thanks, Rowan. Do you guys have another question for us? Tiana?
Hannah has submitted a question to the website. For each actor, she would like to know, what is your favourite scene to play and why?
What is your favourite scene to play and why? Why don't we quickly whip round, starting with you, Eloise, just 10 seconds. Tell us what's your favourite scene and why.
Oh, that's tricky. I really enjoy the coronation scene. It's fun. It's a bit of lightness amongst all the dark. We're all in it together, but there's also a lot going on underneath it all. So
great. Thanks, Eloise. Jack, what about you?
Well, in our version, it's been a little bit edited, so I would say the whole kind of final section, I feel like I get to run through a huge gamut of emotions, and I find it quite cathartic in a way, I suppose.
Great. Jane?
My favourite scene would have to be the coronation as well, because I get to play a young boy who likes to run around, pop party poppers, jump on people's backs, slap box with the king, and just muck around.
Generally have a good time. Great. Chantelle?
My favourite scene is the second time that the witches are seen on stage, and it's mostly because with the costume that I'm wearing, if I aim my face at a particular person in the audience, I always scare them. It's really fun.
Yeah, those masks are very freaky. Stacey, what about you?
My favourite scene is probably the Ross and Macduff scene that happens just after the murder of Duncan. I think it's a really nice breath within the play, and we really get to kind of sit down and actually talk to each other, because we have quite a stylised production that's very much frontward address, I think. It's a nice moment that Felix and I have on stage, and it's great.
Rowan?
The favourite scene that I have to play would be Banquo's death, Banquo's murder. James has come up with a really great concept for that, I think. So if you do get a chance to see it, enjoy.
David, what about you?
Yeah, I really enjoy doing the England scene, mostly because I'm in it. It's one of the only sort of major scenes that Malcolm has, but it's actually one of the longest scenes in our production, and I quite like it because it's a change of time as well. Like, it's daytime, which most of the rest of the play is sort of set at night, and there's a different kind of energy about it, and there's a real power play between Malcolm and Macduff. Quite enjoy it.
Okay, Felix, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with David and say the England scene, playing Macduff, it's a really good scene for him. There's a huge power play between Malcolm and Macduff, and then towards the end of the scene, Ross comes in and tells Macduff that his whole family has been slaughtered. So that's another kind of huge emotional roller coaster for him to go on, and I just really enjoy that scene. It's a good challenge.
Great, thanks, Felix. Caitlin, what's our next question?
Okay, so we've got a few that the witches and Jane might want to take a handle on. The first one is from Liz S on Twitter, and she would like to know why the witches had animal masks. For Jane in particular, Meg on Facebook would like to know why you chose Penny as the name for the son of Macduff. And Renee from Victoria would also like to know how you're going to show, or how you do show, all the unnatural scenes and things in the play.
All the unnatural. Well, let's start off with you, Jane. Jane, can you talk to us a little about the witches, but then also perhaps segue into Penny Macduff and who that is?
The witches. The idea of the animal masks was a bit of a collaboration between James and our designer, Mel Page. I don't really know how that came about, but it's kind of fun. We have these. It was an interesting rehearsal process with the masks, or rather without them, because we mucked around with a few different styles of masks. We started with some like kids' party masks, and we ended up with these guys. So, yeah.
They're really, they're really creepy, aren't they? And I like the idea that there's a ritualistic element to the Weird Sisters. That when they put on the mask, they go into ritual mode, and that they are trying to call upon powers that they're not quite sure how they work, and they kind of get themselves in too deep into something quite dangerous. And they look absolutely freaky under lights, and kind of wonderful.
Quite demonic. Hipster paganism, yeah, that's it.
Now tell me a little bit about Macduff's kid. Who is she?
Yes.
First of all, why Penny?
Why Penny?
And what kind of a child is Macduff's son/daughter?
Well, how did Penny come about? That's a great question. Oh, I know why it was. Because Macduff, in the England scene when he's just delivered the news that I and my mother and I have been killed, he says, "All my pretty chickens, and they're damn at one fell swoop." So I thought maybe my nickname was Henny Penny. That's how it came about.
That's great.
That's true.
Fantastic. And she's a feisty character, isn't she, Penny? She's great.
Yes, it's quite beautiful to get to play. To get to play the children of the play is really quite a gift, because I don't have a great deal of text, but a lot of what I do is about the physicality of the children, which is a lot of fun. If you start, you get these characters that maybe only have one scene or maybe only have one line, but are dotted throughout the play. I start by thinking of how they might sit and how they might stand and how they might walk, and that then feeds into how I will then say my lines, and am I playful or am I quite thoughtful? So yeah, I think it's really great to get to play Penny. She has a wonderful little scene with her mum, and we play with, we've got a little toy bird, so that feeds into a lot of it as well. And yeah.
Great, thanks, Jane. Now there was a question there about the unnatural elements of the play, and I guess you're talking about the murders and the blood and guts and the horrible things that go on. I've got something here to show. Hang on a sec. Okay, so these are a couple of the daggers that we use. I don't know if they're going to slip off. Actually, can you hold them up? So, yeah, there we go. So you can see that they're pre-bloodied already, so that all Macbeth has to do when he goes to pick up the daggers is pick them up, wipe some blood on his hands, and he can come out with gore already on his daggers. And they're quite effective under stage lights like that as well. And they're quite brutal-looking daggers as well. There's a curved one there and a very sharp, long one here as well. And then when we put blood on the characters on stage, when they're getting killed, we use these bottles here. Now, some people have asked, well, why is it so stylized? Because the way we do it is the actor will apply the blood first of all on the person that's about to get killed, and then do the kill shot on them. So, for example, when Lady Macduff gets killed, first of all the murderer puts the blood around her neck and then does the slashing motion and uses this bottle of stage blood. And the reason we've gone with that kind of a stylized approach is that, again, it fits in with the whole ethos of this production, that we are telling a story. We're not trying to be naturalistic. And so we wanted to, again, expose the idea of the theatrics of what we're doing and expose the imagery for what it is, which is made up. We're not trying to be naturalistic with it. And so it's just as gory and just as horrible. And it also allows a bit of a pause in these violent scenes where some horrible artwork starts going on to these characters, especially Banquo's death, where he gets blood sprayed all over his face and body. and it's almost a breath or a hiatus in the scene before the violence resumes. Yeah. Anyway, you should come along in Melbourne and tell us what you think. So, Tiana, you got another question?
Yes, we have a few questions about the superstitions surrounding the play. David, who's in Adelaide, has asked on Twitter whether the tales around not saying Macbeth in the theatre, whether they originated with William Shakespeare. And Jan and Uni in Victoria have asked whether you all believe in the superstitions surrounding performances of the play.
Superstition. Yeah, I look. Jack.
No, I do not. And just to add to that, this is horrible. When I was in drama school, we were in third year doing a couple of productions of different Shakespearean texts at the time, and my best friend was in the other room rehearsing his. And every day before we were about to do a dress run or indeed a performance during the show, we would run into each other's room and whisper Macbeth into the other room. So with no consequence.
You hurt your hand though this time, and your ear.
Yes, I've been hurt a couple of times this show.
Yeah.
Chantal, what do you reckon?
I also do not believe at all in the superstition, and this is having, dislocated my arm right before the opening night. So, no, I still don't think there's a superstition around it.
Felix, do you reckon there is?
No, I have to say I don't believe in the superstition, but I think where it comes from is the fact that this play is quite physical. There's a lot of stage violence. There's a lot of fight choreography. There's a lot of beheading. There's all that sort of stuff. And I think, our production in particular, and I don't think this is exclusive, but our show is very dark. And I think that a lot of things happen on stage, accidents, whatnot, because of the nature of the show. And
because
I think
it's set at night.
That's right. And I think the curse has come about, or the superstition, because things do happen, not just in this show, but in theatre in general. It can be a dangerous profession, and if it's not treated properly. And so I think a lot of people attach this superstition or curse to this play, where really it's no different from any other. It just happens to have a lot of fighting and death and violence. Although that having been said, in the production that Belle did 2 years ago, the entire cast came down with food poisoning, which was attributed to the curse. So maybe there is some.
I believe, and I've been saying prayers for all of you. You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Jane. Because we probably would be dead if it wasn't for Jane. So.
Thank you very much, Jane. Caitlin, you've got a question for us.
Okay, so Meg on Facebook would like to know what does Macbeth offer a contemporary audience, and who would be a contemporary Macbeth and Lady Macbeth?
What does Macbeth offer a contemporary audience? Who would like to answer that question? Anyone got any ideas about that one?
Is this Macbeth the character?
Oh, Macbeth the play. Okay. Stacey, what about you? Stacey?
Yeah, great. Well, I suppose Macbeth is about power, and also, I think it's one of the most seductive things a person, can aspire to have, or, to feel powerful is something I think that every kind of human, can kind of be drawn towards. It also addresses, like looking into that awful side within yourself, like, addressing kind of ambition and those sorts of things, which I think are, of course, in everyday society, we always, we're always scheming to get the last cupcake on the tray, all that sort of thing. So I think it's very well, my cupcakes you are. Yeah, I think it is very relevant. Anyone else have anything interesting to say?
I concur with this. I think that Shakespeare is eternal. It's not some olden day boring stuff. He's talking about time. He talks about, standing, jumping to another bank and shoal of time, whereby all of these great things could happen, and you'd leave this, what they've got now behind. And so it's that idea of jumping forward and taking what you want. And I think for all of us in life in general, don't we all want to do that? We all want to, take hold of what we want, and we're, held back for certain reasons or whatever. So, it just happens to be set when it's set, and, you can change that, and, you know, ultimately it's the language and the imagery and the ideas in any Shakespearean show are about humanity. It's about us now, you know, and that's how we're playing it, and that's how it's kind of got to be played, I guess.
So who would be a modern day Mac and Lady M? What do we reckon?
Beyonce and Jay-Z.
I was totally thinking that.
Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Okay, I think we can't top that. David, did you have one?
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, wow. Oh, there you go. Beyonce
But House
and
of Cards, I mean, is a great example of, you know, a series that talks about, you know, like Kevin Spacey's character is kind of based on Richard III, maybe Macbeth. So, you know, watch that.
Robin Wright is very...
Robin Wright, yeah, very Lady Macbeth, yeah. So very political.
Absolutely.
I definitely used Beyonce as motivation.
Okay, Eloise said she used Beyonce as motivation. Fantastic. Tiana, do you have a question for us?
Yes, a question from Meg in Melbourne by email. She has asked what makes Shakespeare's plays so special, and how would you compare your experience acting in a Shakespeare production to other productions you've performed in?
Who'd like to answer that? Eloise?
Sure. Which one?
All of them.
All of them. I think with this production and playing Lady Macbeth, you know, it's a big task. I think for me the difference between having done this and other plays that I've done before, which I suppose are naturalistic or modern and not Shakespearean, is that the ideas in Shakespeare are big. They're really big ideas, and you just have to you have to rise to meet them. So I think it's sort of like acting on another scale. I don't know, does that make sense? You know, it's... you still are obviously always striving for truth and to find the humans within the characters. But yeah, in terms of the language and the size of it, it's on another level. Yeah, I think that's for me the thing.
And I think the other thing that's really exciting about these plays, especially Macbeth, is that things happen, and you don't often get that anymore with theatre, you know, all the time. That in these plays, things happen. These guys talk about wanting to kill the king, and then they kill the king, and then you deal with the consequences afterwards. I think that doesn't often happen in our society in general. We live through a lot of different, you know, medias, and we don't kind of, it's, I don't know, we don't act in the way that they do. These characters do. We don't think about something and then act on it.
I was just going to say, just going off what you were saying about how large the sort of the stakes of it all is, it really exposes you as an actor, I think, because you have to meet those stakes, and because the language is as it is. I just find, like, you know, for an actor learning and, you know, trying to improve their craft, I find Shakespeare's like the best tool. Yeah. It certainly is, that's what I've found being on the road doing the players. So.
Great, thank you, David. Tiana, got a question for us?
Yes, Ben on Twitter has asked, with the violence and dark themes in Macbeth, are there any elements of comedy within the play?
Are there any elements of comedy in this play?
Yes,
David, you've got the microphone.
Is. Yeah.
What's the comedy in this play?
Yes, there is. So, funny enough, just after the king's been killed, in the original text, there is a drunken gatekeeper, the porter, who stumbles on and does a single scene, basically, first of all, pretending to be this gatekeeper of hell and sort of comparing, you know, humans and whatnot to these, basically commenting on everyone's dishonesty. And then Macduff comes in and he's making jokes about the effects of alcohol. In our version, as I said before, we gave that bit of text to Malcolm. We got rid of the gatekeeper part of it, and essentially Malcolm, we've decided, has been partying all night because he just got named the Prince of Cumberland. And so he comes in from sort of behind the audience, and there's a bit of an improv stand-up routine, bit of banter, which then bleeds into Malcolm using the alcohol speech to Macduff. So it's a very, very funny bit, and it gives the audience a chance to make some noise as well, because sort of, you know, Malcolm gets them all sort of riled, and yeah, that certainly sort of breaks up the kind of the darkness of the whole thing. Yeah, it's a lot of relief.
That's right. Shakespeare often does that, doesn't he? But less so in this play. Romeo and Juliet, the first half of it is a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
Hamlet, there's lots of moments of lightness and fun, but this play is pretty dark all the way through. You just got that one moment.
The Macduff family, that scene, it's quite fun, quite light.
The coronation's also a good one too.
The coronation's another light one. In this production, there's a lot more lightness than everywhere else, I suppose.
I think the banquet as well. Like the banquet has elements of, you know, I mean, it's not meant to be rip-roaring, but it's, you know, it is, there are amusing moments in
With
it.
him seeing a ghost and everyone freaking out about it.
Yeah, because I think it's a bit of a challenge in a play like this to find those moments of lightness. It can be done very dark, and obviously the themes and, you know, all the violence naturally kind of lead you down that path. But I think it's up to us as a company to try and find those moments of lightness, you know, to give the audience a bit of a break, and ourselves as well.
Sometimes when something's so tragic when it's so tragic as well, you often find the audience will laugh at it because they're so uncomfortable. And there is funny moments, especially in the banquet when Macbeth's just losing it and he's lying on the table, you know, after seeing the ghost. People often find that quite funny, you know, just the extremities of what's just happened.
Okay, so Caitlin, have you got one more question for us?
Yes, so Bridget on Facebook would like to know, in relation to, well, for James and also the rest of the cast, in approaching the play, which way do you lean with the debate between fate versus free will for Macbeth?
Fate versus free will. There's a light little question to end us off here for our Q&A session. Who wants to tackle that one? Fate versus free will. Felix.
Look, I guess it comes down to interpretation, and I think all of us may have a different view, and James may even have a different view from that as well. But, you know, I think it's one of those questions where Macbeth is delivered a piece of information by the witches. It's then his choice or his free will to act on that or not. Now, he'd obviously had probably thoughts about killing Duncan, you know, maybe just daydreams or whatever, that he wanted to be the king. But it's not until the witches actually say, you will be the king, that he puts those plans into fruition. So it's, you know, it's tricky to kind of say whether it was one or the other, chicken or the egg kind of thing. But I think that it probably comes down to free will. You know, Banquo was told that his children will be kings, and yet he doesn't lift a hand. You know, so it's that kind of, if it's within you and you're naturally ambitious, all you need is that little push, you know, and whether it comes from a prophecy or something else. So I think at the end of the day, it's probably down to free will. I think Macbeth is ambitious enough and driven enough to kill Duncan. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Felix. I think we have time for one more question from Tiana. One more.
Yes, a question from Bianca on Twitter and also Marie on the website. They'd both like to know how do you make the transition from such intense performances back to yourself after the play's done?
Very good question. I think that's a good one for Jack because he carries a very heavy load in this show. Very, very intense performance. What do you think, Jack?
An excellent question. Well, I'll be the first to admit, I'll be very honest about it. I have found this character very difficult in terms of an emotional and mental kind of sense. It has been quite difficult to explore some of the themes of this play on a day-to-day basis. But I think that it seems so simple, but if you leave the theatre, and it's different for everyone, I sometimes like to just chill out by myself for a while, but I think you start processing like what we just did as part of our day at work. So I feel extraordinarily lucky that, and I'm sure we all do, that we get to do this as a job. It's just incredible because for all of us, this is our dream. But it's still a job. So I think afterwards, it's a really good constructive thing to go, oh, you know what? That was a good day at work, and place that in your own head. Otherwise, these things just eat you up inside. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Absolutely. Jack, thank you very much for that. Well, I just want to say thank you to the cast for taking part in our Q&A today. That was terrific, and thank you to all of you for your fascinating questions. Remember, the players are heading out on the road next. Well, we've got a few more days here in Sydney, then down to the Arts Centre in Melbourne, and we want to thank our partners, the Australian Government Department of Education and Foxtel for making our shows possible, and here in Sydney, we co-present with the Sydney Opera House, so thanks to them. And in Melbourne, our presenting partner is the Arts Centre in Melbourne. If you want to follow the players, they're still around on social media. Hashtag Macbeth Experiment on Instagram. Follow their Facebook, like their Facebook page, and get updates from them, and follow their blog as well. I'd just like to thank Chantelle, Jane, Jack, Eloise, Stacey, Rowan, David and Felix, and Tiana and Caitlin for handling the questions over there. That's it from all of us. Thanks to all of you, and we'll see you in the theatre very soon.